Welcome to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. This show is your one-stop shop for all things health, fitness, and nutrition, and is brought to you by the team at Pulse Fitness. You can learn more about how the team at Pulse Fitness is helping people live stronger, longer lives by going to pulse.fitness/podcast. But for now, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I am here with Coach CJ, aka Silly C.
Yo.
And ZK, Zach Espinoza.
What's up?
What's up, guys? How we doing today?
Good. Chilling, living and chilling.
Oh, smooth. Zach, what's your middle name?
Michael.
Michael?
Michael.
Oh, okay. I thought your initials were ZEC.
No.
Oh, what's that tattoo?
My last name is
Just
Espinoza.
Oh yeah, ZE. Okay, yeah. I don't know. What's your tattoo? What's
Z.
on there? ZE. That's it.
E. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. I don't know. We were talking about it before. We were having some technical difficulties. This is our first episode on video. So that look into the camera, I like it. So we're finally doing it. We thought about doing video a long time ago and we decided not to. And now we got a really cool video guy. So we're doing all of our podcasts on video. So we're back. We're excited to be with you guys this week. So a couple of housekeeping items. Client of the week. This week we have two, husband and wife, Amy Ann and Nate. They are actually the inspiration, kind of, sort of, for this episode that we're going to be talking about. But Amy Ann and Nate have been here for, I guess, about a year. And interesting, when they came in, I signed them up, and then I started like Facebook stalking them. And I noticed that we had some friends in common. And I was like, "Hey, how do you know this guy?" And they're like, "Oh, that's our nephew." And I was like, "Oh, he was one of the groomsmen in my wedding." So super just small world like situation. But anyway, Amy Ann and Nate have done awesome. They've seen really, really good results. Even though Amy Ann will never be happy with the results that she's gotten, she looks incredible, like total change visibly to me. And I'm super happy with the work that they both were putting in. So, and Nate's obviously like crushing it. He's just an old athlete that just moves and gets after it and lifts heavy weights. It's kind of fun.
Big old strong man.
Yeah, big strong guy. So we love you guys. It's great having you, and thank you so much for just being like awesome members at 6 a.m. bright and early.
And they're even crazy enough to show up early and do some cardio at 5:30.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's solid. Can't do any wrong there. So, all right, this week we're talking about repetition versus variation. And so the reason I said that, well, not really Nate, but Amy Ann's kind of the inspiration for this, because she brought it up to me a couple of weeks ago. It was like, hey, I was just wondering, we did like the same exercises, a couple of the same exercises this week in two different workouts. And she's like, I don't know if that's effective. And so she just kind of had some questions about it and why it happened. And so I thought that'd be a really good topic for us to talk about, because a lot of times when people come in for consultation, they'll tell me like, hey, I worked with this trainer and it was awesome. I loved it. We never did the same workout twice. And I mean, what do you guys, Zach, what do you think about that? So I'll go to you, because I know you're just going to have like a snide remark about this, but is that the right approach where you never do the same workout twice?
No. No. So like both of those things within those sentences can't be true. If you have, I had a great trainer, we never did the same thing twice. So like, how do you really measure progress if you never do the same thing twice? And the majority of the things that we repeat here are the major compound lifts: squat, bench, deadlift, variations. It's like we have variations between like being single arm, alternating, double, stuff like that. But those are all compound lifts that no matter how you choose to like split up your training program throughout every week, you need to do all of those lifts multiple times over in order to see growth.
Yeah, so it's something that we've always, I guess, planned around somewhat in our program design is, okay, how do we structure the workout program, the workouts themselves, so that our clients are getting exactly what it is that they need, but they don't get bored with the workouts. And so there's a fine line between being effective and just kind of like throwing the kitchen sink, out and or throwing the kitchen sink at our clients with the workouts and just like throwing random stuff together that doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, right? So repetition is important to measuring results, right? But to getting results, like if you want to get better and stronger at a particular exercise, then you have to do that exercise and you have to do it repetitively. I would say, like, ideally you're targeting the same muscle groups and movement patterns at a minimum once per week. Is that right? CJ, you agree with that?
Yeah. I would say, if I just take it back to me, I do the very similar workouts just about every week. I might switch up the order that I do them in, but I do pretty much the same exercises because it's easier to gauge where I'm at, where I'm going to, and just to, track my progress. Plus, they're the lifts that you need to do. If you're doing the ones that you need to, why stop or why switch it up and do other ones? I understand getting bored, but at least for me, half of the battle is, seeing myself improve. It's not just doing an exercise or doing a lift.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we always go back to, and pretty much every episode is like, what are your goals? Or what you're trying to, or is what you're doing moving you closer to your goals? And I think that's one of the reasons why people kind of love boot camps, I guess, like the boot camp structure, is because the person designing those boot camps is not necessarily thinking about like a program approach. They're just thinking of it in terms of like, okay, how do I make this one workout really, really cool? But it's a standalone workout, which is why people will plateau within several weeks of doing a boot camp workout. So the repetition is important to create adaptation and important for measurements. What areas do you guys think can we create variations in that keep clients engaged, but also are going to move them in the right direction?
I think when it comes to that, different ways that you can do it. Almost any exercise you can do either with a single arm if it's upper body or with a single leg when it's lower body. So you can do that to change it up so you're not doing the exact same thing. You also can add in some balance or other implements where we have like Bosu balls out there. You can do lots of exercises on that. That adds a little bit of instability. And I think that still moves people towards their goals just because you're adding more muscle recruitment. So you're adding more muscles in there. So you're going to get more results from it. I think that's one of the best ways to add in.
What do you think, Zach, like about what CJ said, and then like different phases of training, rep ranges, reps, sets, tempo, like all those different variables that we have?
Yeah, so like as far as what CJ said, I agree. So like we often make things unilateral versus alternating, things like that. We also vary things based on repetition according to what phase we're in as well. You can vary the same movement by changing like the plane that it's in. So like a chest press, if you do it lying on a bench versus standing up like with a cable or anything like that, it's still going to be the same movement pattern, but it's going to change the muscle recruitment versus like a standing versus lying down exercise. As far as a lower body exercise, we give people like split squats, a stationary lunge. A simple way to vary that is to have them do a walking lunge. So it's the exact same movements. It just fine tunes the way, since you're moving, your body kind of has to recruit a little bit different muscles. But things like that are simple tweaks that we can do to add, to make it feel completely different, add a little bit extra level of difficulty. As far as the phases is actually the easiest way to offer any sort of variation, because even if we don't change well, we'll change the rep scheme according to the phase. So we're currently in a strength phase. So strength, in order to elicit greater strength improvements, we lower the reps because we have to increase the weight load. So that's a very simple way that pretty much everybody alters their major compound exercises, because even within a set, if you have somebody do a squat for 10 reps and then they haven't, the set before they did it for 5 reps, if you're doing it correctly, if like the load is correctly, it's a massively different like demand on your body. Anybody that's ever squatted for high volume versus squatting 3 reps, it's a completely different thing. So it's the easiest way to do it, and it's also, I would say, the most important because it elicits completely different adaptations, but depending on the phase that we're in and the rep count.
So like going back to changing the exercise a little bit. So like a split squat, which is a stationary lunge, versus a walking lunge, or like forward, or a walking lunge backwards, or a reverse lunge where you're still stationary. Same muscles that you're using, same muscle recruitment. Do you guys think that there's benefit to that, like changing it up, or are we doing that just to keep the client happy? Like, is one of those going to be more effective than the other, and it should just be like you do the same movement all the time?
I mean, if you're going to using your lunges example, when you're doing a forward lunge, I feel like a forward lunge is more difficult than a reverse lunge if you're starting in that same position, just because of the way that you're going, where the center of gravity is in the body, it changes it. The way that you're pushing off to move forward or move backwards changes the muscles. Although it's the same muscles that are moving, they're working just slightly different. So I think it's definitely beneficial to do it in the different planes of motion or the planes of existence.
You agree?
Yeah, and I think it also can sometimes change like the like order in which you have to like use your muscles. So like if you do a reverse lunge, it recruits your muscles in a different sequence than if you did it forward. So even though you might be using the exact same muscles and throughout the whole duration of the rep, it feels very different. And as far as like if one's easier than the other, like generally speaking, like anything walking, like moving is going to be more difficult than stationary, but it really just depends on the person. It's like we have people, like you might be strong, but your balance is very poor. So a walking lunge wouldn't be something that's very beneficial to you. Or we can even do some sort of movement to it, but add like an assistance form to it. So like we have a lot of clients who have knee problems or whatever it may be, like ankle problems. So they do a reverse lunge holding a TRX, so they can still get the benefits of not walking, but moving throughout their exercise, while also reducing some of the instability that's going to cause them any sort of problems.
So like I know, we have our scale basically of, okay, here's what's appropriate for the client based off of how well they move and the difficulty of the exercise, like what the client's capable of. So for us the way we would scale it is we would say like, hey, a walking lunge is more difficult than a split squat. And so the client needs to be able to perform like a perfect split squat before we would have them add any movement to it. That's one element. But within a split squat, since we're just using that as an example, I can add variation based off of how the client is holding the load. So where the load is, right? If I'm holding a kettlebell at my chest, it's different than if I have a barbell on my back, or a barbell in the front rack, or if I have the kettlebell down by my side, or I have one kettlebell in each hand. And then if I have one, what side is it on? Is it contralateral, which would be the opposite side, or is it ipsilateral, which would be the same side? So those are all little minor details. So even though it's the exact same movement pattern, I'm stationary, I'm going up and down in a lunge position, I'm adding variation and getting basically better at that movement pattern by changing the position of the way I'm holding the weight and where the weight is. You guys agree with that? So that's like one area. So even though the client is doing a split squat, it's still a different form of a split squat that is still moving them in the right direction. And that's the key, right? If we're still practicing that same movement and repeating that same movement, we're just changing a little dimension of it to get the client better and continue to strengthen that movement pattern. That's kind of the key to it, right? And then the phase and the reps, the sets, like all of those things, there's specific purposes for that, and how the client holds the load or what specific movement they're doing might change based off of the phase that we're in. So if we're in a strength phase, for a lot of our clients, it is going to make more sense to do like a barbell so they can really load up the weight. CJ, you did a video on that earlier this week, versus using like dumbbells or a kettlebell where they can't go as heavy. Like we can add more of a load to it if we're in the strength phase. So that's another kind of form of variation, right? So I think the thing that people kind of misconstrue is the movement patterns. There's only so many movement patterns. How you put them together and then little minor tweaks that you make is really where you want to have the variation that can make the workout feel different from workout to workout, so you don't get bored with like if I came in every single Tuesday, let's say, and I'm going to do split squats, and every time I hold the kettlebell at my chest and I do 10 reps on one leg and then 10 reps on the other leg, and that's like my routine, and I do that every single Tuesday, one, I'm probably not going to continue to progress, so I'm not going to see any benefits to that after a certain point, and then I'm just going to get bored. Like I'm not going to want to do it anymore. So you need variation, but it's got to be methodical, and it can't just be like, okay, I'm throwing this workout together and it's super difficult and that's what's going to make it fun and different. Cool, yeah, it will be fun and different, but you probably won't continue to see the benefit of it.
Yeah, I think there's layers to it too. So like talking about like split squat, you could have somebody stay at a split squat versus go to a progression, which would be a walking lunge, and just load it more in a split squat. Like for whatever your intended goal is that training session, you could keep somebody who might be more advanced in a standard split squat, might be too easy as opposed to a walking lunge, but you give them a stationary lunge or a split squat with a barbell and just load them with more weight and drop the reps, just because your particular goal during that session is that you want them to load it more, because a walking lunge you can't necessarily load to the same extent as anything where you'd be stationary. And just talking about how there's a lot of different minor tweaks that we can do. You could even keep somebody with the exact same exercise, since you're talking about doing 10 reps every Tuesday. You could keep them at 10 reps for the same exercise, holding it the same way, and you could just change tempo. So like something like that is just another example of like little tweaks that we make every single hour for the most part, depending on the client, depending on the phase we're in, depending on what our workout is, that it shows. Like we could make variations within the same thing, even though having the exact same exercise with the exact same rep count for the same amount of sets.
I didn't anticipate this episode being like that hard for people to understand, but now that we're kind of going through it, I'm trying to put myself in like just the listener's shoes, and they're probably like, what are these words that you're saying? Contralateral, ipsilateral, what's a split squat? What's tempo, right? Like all these things. So there's basically what it comes down to is exercise science is science, right? There's a degree of it that requires knowledge, which is why, thankfully, that's why we have jobs, right, and careers. But it's not as straightforward as like, hey, let me just pick a weight up and put a weight down, right? There's more to it than that. If you want to maximize the result that you're going to get, sure, doing anything, any type of work exercise whatsoever, initially is probably going to move you in the right direction, and you're going to be healthier overall. So like, I wouldn't discourage anybody from going and like doing a boot camp, or just picking up some weights and doing it. I mean, you could get injured. Working out's dangerous if you're doing it wrong. But even if you're just like, hey, I love having a totally different workout thrown at me every single day, and that's what's most important to me, then cool. Like if you want to do that, just understand that that's there's pros and cons to that, and you really ought to have like a structured, thoughtful process behind the reasons you are doing what you're doing, especially if you're somebody that has like a specific goal in mind, which the majority of our clients coming in here are like, hey, I want to lose weight, I want to tone up, I want to get stronger. Those things, those are specific goals that the client has. So we have to create programming that matches that and aligns with that. And also, like, most important rule to our industry is don't hurt the revenue source, right? So we wouldn't want to do anything that's going to put our clients at risk of getting injured, because that's a bad business model. So I don't know. You guys got anything else for the people? For the people? No. All right. Just a reminder that this episode is sponsored by Legacy Nutrition. Legacy Nutrition, we love that brand. We trust that brand because it is our brand. We created it. Really great supplements. You can go to legacynutrition.fit. I know that's kind of confusing, but .fit is kind of like .com. So legacynutrition.fit, and you can trust the supplements, and you can order them. If you use discount code SUPS20, you get 20% off your first order. And that's all I got for the people. You guys got anything else? We're good? All right. We will be back with you next week. Thanks, guys.
Aim for the stars, so if you miss, you fall on the cloud.
Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.